Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Ready, Fire, Aim podcast. I'm your host, Thad Barnes, and I'm here today with Matt Farmer of Moment 37. Matt, great to see you. Welcome.
Great to be here.
So, we were kind of talking off air about, technical troubles and all these kinds of things. And you mentioned something that I thought was interesting is Safari for Windows. And I actually hadn't even heard of that. What was it like to try and get that going?
Painful. It's definitely not meant for Windows. Luckily, I reset my Chrome and it started working.
Did you actually ever get it going?
I've had it going before. I don't even know if it works anymore for Windows. There's workarounds for it. I know, like, especially in the web, I used to do web dev and I had to install all the browsers on my computer. And it worked back then. Who knows, 2025, things
Yeah, for sure. Microsoft and Apple have long had a history of not playing well together. So I'd imagine it probably doesn't work anymore.
probably not.
So what do you got going on at Moment 37? I know, so a little bit of background for the audience. You and I have been connected on Facebook and I've been following you for a long time. And I remember when you first started posting about AI, what, 2 years ago? Maybe more. And I'd see your posts and they'd get like one comment, a little bit. And I thought, he's posting really interesting stuff. Why aren't people engaging? And now your posts just blow up every time I see them. You've got tons of comments and tons of engagement. So kind of, take us through that. Is Moment 37 really about AI, or was that kind of your agency? Kind of where are you at right now?
Yeah, so it's somewhat split. So my background is I exited a marketing agency about 2.5 years ago, and I was kind of looking what to do next. And I thought, I'm probably the least creative person ever. Let's jump into it. I'm always down for learning more stuff. And I had a non compete. I couldn't market for 2 years, and then AI came out. And I've been playing with AI even before ChatGPT came out. Some people I know and invented conversion AI, which is now Jasper. So I was playing with it in like 2021, 2022. Even in my agency days, I was like, you know what? I think I can make an algorithm that could do everything that I'm doing. So back then it was GPT-2. Didn't work out whatsoever. So I went into the personal brand space. At first, I was teaching people how to do stuff like affiliate marketing, and then ChatGPT launched. And I'm all about emerging technology. So I made websites back when I had to argue with people that websites would be a thing. And I did digital marketing before Google had ads for it. So it was one of those ones where I'm like, okay, we have an absolute mega wave coming. So yeah, I basically started up my personal brand. I was getting views, TikToker. I have 5 kids, and nothing makes them think I'm more cool than being like, daddy's an influencer. So it's also like, to some extent, to show my kids you do whatever you want on that side. And then an old partner reached out, and he's really in the development space. He made the first direct messenger for Instagram. Got
Hmm.
sued by Facebook, but he had a billion messages on the platform and big technology background. So Moment 37 was basically jumping back into the agency space and trying to figure it out. So we do a lot of stuff. Like, we pretty much did everything. We tried it all. We tried the consulting, we made bots, we made callers, and then we've made AI SaaS, like full AI SaaS systems that have generated millions of dollars on that side, just really trying to figure out what the opportunity is going to be for it. And yeah, Moment 37 is just recently, well, in the next week, we're putting Cloud37.ai live, which is it's basically a business suite, like a chat. Think of it as a chat GPT for your business, where you have a curated knowledge base, and all your agents and automations can run from it. Because one of the things we found was, like, we made some support bots for some companies that were doing like 9,000 support tickets per day. And that was
Per
great. Like, we
day?
set it up. It
Holy
took
smokes.
yeah. So it was great. It was working really well. And then they came to us and they're like, hey, we're running a sale. And we're like, oh, well, it took us 2 months to get it fine tuned and working properly. And now there's a sale. And we call it Black Friday syndrome, where Black Friday, you have to change your knowledge base. And then Cyber Monday, you have to change your knowledge base. And then after Cyber Monday, you have to change it again. So out of utility, we're like, there has to be an easier way to do this. And that's why we basically built the platform.
So I was looking at Moment 37, and then you had mentioned Cloud 37 earlier. And so I started looking at that, when we were talking about having you on the show. Cloud 37 seems interesting to me in the sense that right on your site, it talks about we can integrate into anything. Either we'll use an existing tool or we'll create a tool or we'll direct connect to an API. If it's like there seem to be no limitation. And is that a function of your coding prowess or is that a function of because AI can just help you do all that?
It's a bit of both, and we leverage other technologies. We're not trying to rebuild the wheel for stuff like integrations. So, what we did is just made the platform insanely open. So, we gave it an API where normally you get an API through like MailChimp, and they're like, oh, you just can edit the name, or you're only able to do this. No, you could build everything via our API. So, you're able to connect to the stuff like the N8Ns or the Zapiers of the world and leverage all of their connections or MCP and everything else for it. So it's not something where, of course, we built in some integrations for it, but there is literally thousands of integrations, and that's one thing we found with business is every business runs a different stack. Like you build something beautiful for Slack and they're like, well, we use Microsoft Teams, and you're like, okay, and you end up building up this massive amount of code base that you have to maintain for it versus you could use stuff like Composio, which uses MCPs to basically connect to those different services, or something like N8N and just API through. So we just thought on our side, for our own sake, let's make it as open as possible so we can easily build that stuff without having to maintain them because we went down that route.
And how do you see the future of that going? Like with AI being able to launch its own browser based on your criteria and then just like log into the Facebook ads platform and perform actions for you browser based. Like it's just using a computer. It's no longer requiring an AI. Do you see that coming anytime soon? What's your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think there's some use case for the browser. It's likely going to be a mix. And there may be a time where we lose the abstraction of even needing other SaaS tools. Satya Nadella talks about how, all these SaaS tools are really just a business as a CRUD database. So you just have a database of information that change in the background. And all these tools, like current SaaS, basically doing that for you. It's making it a lot easier. So I think there's going to be room. I call them like action agents where they could go through and they could click on everything. I don't think it's the most efficient way of doing it. That's the one downside. If we're going to replace people or do all these tasks, I think it's going to come down to like I view everything as somewhat of an auction system. And that could be the PTSD of being a Facebook advertiser for so
Right.
long where the top 10% is always going to win. So you really have to do have your advantages there on that side. So like let's say if it's a less efficient way versus going through an API, you really will want to take care of that. Also, I think that's going to take a little bit longer because there's not really much training data on using applications. And I'll give you an example of it because I've tested all the agents and I know how capable and how incapable they are. And they get confused on we do all this stuff in the background where we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like we've been using the internet for a long time. So when we go to something like Instagram, you could easily say this is how many followers that Matt Farmer has. You'll see it for followers for these agents. They still don't know. And I've tricked agents where I did a post about like, hey, I got a 250,000 followers total. And that wasn't just Instagram, but it saw the post. And then the agent reported back, it's like, oh, Matt Farmer has a 250,000 followers, which was great because I know brands are going through and doing everything there. But it's stuff as basic as that needs training data for it. And that's really like we're copy and pasting everything from the internet that's ever existed, but we're not actually teaching right now like the understanding of this is an Instagram page, these are your friends, this is your followers. So there's still a lot of information it doesn't know, especially on the workflow side. So anyone, you watch the videos and from influencers like myself and others where it seems like, wow, these agents can do anything. Watch one click and I made $1 million business, etc. Then you actually try them in real life and you realize how dumb they actually are right now. We still have a while for the action agents and it looking at a screen and it just understanding what it's looking at or what the user interface is because it's never really seen it before. and it doesn't have usage training on how we work with YouTube or Instagram or these CRMs or anything. So in some cases, it is better to use like an API or an MCP because it's better able to understand it just in code form. It can come to better conclusions looking at the code than just looking at a screenshot of a web page and trying to figure out where to click.
That's interesting because you and I had a conversation in one of your Facebook threads about kind of training agents and training AI and whether or not it's only looking back on historical data, even if it's from 30 seconds ago, but the history of the internet and the difference between that and deep learning, where it can actually think and learn and make its own assessments and kind of come up with new knowledge. It's interesting that you're talking about that now because we have to train the agents on the data sets we want them to use. How do you see the new deep learning that we talked about kind of influencing that?
So there's a lot to deep learning and exactly kind of what advantages it has, and there's a lot of questions with it. And that's why, I agreed with you that large language models can't reason, but I still at the same time believe that they're eventually going to have that emerging, and they're just really bad at it right now. And so a lot of the deep learning just requires a ton of data sets. So that's why it gets good at math and code and science, because there's a definite answer to everything. So they could set up a trillion simulations, and it basically gets better and better at getting to that point. The real question is can you generalize that? So if you become really good at math, really good at coding, and really good at science, can the reasoning that it learns to get to the end of those problems be generalized to solving other problems? And that's kind of the golden question we have right now. From my understanding, OpenAI's latest, so they did the IMO, the International Math Olympiad, on a generalized model that wasn't actually trained for math. So we're starting to see emergence of that and actual thought in general. I just think we're at toddler level for it right now. And I
Right.
think eventually we will see that reasoning come up, and it's really going to be the last thing because there's also reasoning and planning, and there's so many different levels to it. And one of the best examples I've ever heard was, it was like planning a trip from New York to Paris. The reasoning could be as simple, or the planning could be as simple as, you get buy an Uber, you buy a plane ticket and you go there. But it can be as complex as you have to activate this muscle fiber in order to move your leg to go towards the door and turn the handle and everything. There's so many different layers that you can have for reasoning, and they call it like the level 2 thinking for it. And I think we're going towards that. And we're starting to see it in stuff like recent benchmarks where it's forcing these companies to, like, think of, if we have the massive data set that we train on right now, and it's from that it's able to learn and pull abstractions, but that's the only thing we're requesting it to do. Now we're doing the deep learning and teaching it how to think. And with tests like ArcAGI 2, that actually forces some type of reasoning. Every human can do art would pretty much score perfect on it, but AI has a lot of trouble for it. And it's really just starting to teach it that stuff that it hasn't been taught before. Like a large language model has never seen red or blue before, but they know if you put red or blue together, you're going to get purple. So it starts to get this emerging like understanding and everything for it. And we're starting to see that happen. We also don't know what kind of walls or what kind of scale, or even just in general what reasoning is for us to perfectly mimic it, or even to test like how good it is at reasoning for it. So it's especially in the early stages. So I think we're starting to get that emergence happening with this new deep learning that they're putting on top of it. But we're not, even if we're doing it, and I view it more as a spectrum versus binary. Everyone is loves to say it can't reason or it can reason. I think it's just really bad at it right now. And you can
Yeah.
see it do, even with like they did test time compute to give it reasoning power and thinking and giving it time to think. And you're seeing it start to come to conclusions and solve problems and try something and then be able to like deduct from it and be like, okay, that was actually wrong and a horrible idea. Let me try this now. Even reading through it, now that we have access to actually view what it's thinking, you start to see it, and it starts to look a bit magical there. I just think, this isn't something that's solved by 2026. It's more of like a 2027 thing. But I think the capabilities are going to be there.
But you think it's that soon, 2 years maybe?
Just at the speed that we're seeing everything happen, because people like to view large language model performance as kind of like it's either good or it's not, or like 1 out of 10. But there's different things inside of that that you really have to rate it for, like regurgitating information, 10 out of 10, transforming information. Well, at the beginning, everyone was like, large or token prediction is never going to be able to do math. Now it scores a gold medal, and it crushes me in every single way when it comes to math and programming and science. So you really have to look at it for all of those columns and what it's at. And it really even depends how well you can use it too at the same time, where some people don't understand how to use the tools. So you could have a 6 out of 10 large language model do 10 out of 10 creative writing. If you also are an expertise in creative writing and know how to guide it and talk to it to fix all the problems that are wrong with it. So I still think, yeah, we have a lot of stuff to check off, but I think we'll eventually be there. And I think the data exists for it. And that's why a lot of my money's on Google winning the AI race. Because if you think of how much usage data they have for Google Workspace of people doing all the tasks that you're going to be doing for business through Gmail, through YouTube, through the entire internet of all time, I think that they just have to really find a way to give that data set to AI, or at least set up scenarios where you could start to test it and train it. And I think it's going to be able to adapt and do it. It's just a question of, you know, will it get to human level, and how far beyond human level can it get to? Because we really don't know what the ceiling is for it too, which is a bit scary. For all we know, intelligence is just an inch away from what humans have already achieved, but it could also be exponentially like 1,000 times. And we don't even know what that is going to look like.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I saw a short just yesterday, I think it was, where human intelligence quotients, IQ tests, are measured at a mean of 100. That's the average intelligence across the entire human race. So some people are lower, some people are higher. The average is 100, but the average intelligence of AI, at least according to this guy, was 120. So how long before it's at 140 or 150 or 200 or 1,000, right? How long does that take? And because it's an exponential equation, it's not just a one to one. Every X amount of months, it gets to this level. It seems like it would be at 150 or 1,000 much quicker than the average human intelligence has increased. And so I wonder, as it gets exponentially faster, yeah, what does that mean? How do we measure intelligence? And if it's so far beyond a human, how do we cope with that? How do we deal with that?
Yeah, I'm an optimist overall for it. And I believe if super intelligence exists and it's actually intelligent, it should know how to deal with the problems that it creates. That's the most optimistic look that reality isn't always the same for it. But that's the whole problem too, is, and it's even with stuff like quantum computing, is we no longer have ways to test it once it's smarter than us, because how can we confirm if it's significantly smarter than us? How are we going to benchmark it and actually know what the answer is, unless we just get a consensus across a bunch of different models for it? So we're going to run into that problem too, where there's going to be a point where intelligence is somewhat unknown, or we'll just take AI's word for it on that end, just because we won't be able to do it. If it's better than every expert in the world at everything, how do we tell if it went from 300 IQ to 400 IQ to 500 IQ?
Right. When you make a good point when you said, will it be able to solve its own problems that it creates? I guess that assumes that it would know that it was a problem, or that it perceives it to be a problem, because maybe we think it's a problem, but it doesn't. Right. And if artificial intelligence says this is not a problem for me, the humans could be in big trouble.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like it's really easy to go into the doomer side of
Yeah.
things for it, where it's just like, oh, well, it won't really have a use for humans. It'd be interesting if anything, maybe it gets super intelligent, it builds a spaceship and leaves, and it's like, I'm getting away from,
You
these
guys
guys
are
are a
too
risk.
primitive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I got to get away from this primitive Earth for my own survival, because humans are getting angry on that side. But yeah, there's an absolute ton of risk on that side. Like I don't deny that, everything is going to be great and there's a potential amazing future from it, but there's also a scary future where, where we become the pet of AI to some extent. And maybe it's a good owner and maybe it's a bad owner and sees us in the way. And I think it's humans are a risk too of how you steer it and how you talk to it. It's like, hey, just open-ended questions where it could come to an answer that we don't want, that's bad. Like, hey, we need to stop all pollution, and it sees the easiest solution is to get rid of humans. That's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we'll have to see how that goes. I still don't know. Having 5 kids, it's crazy to think of what their future is going to look like. I like to stay optimistic about it. We're not there yet. It's still going to be a while before there's runaway AI or even AI that's good enough. I think once it gets to a certain point, AGI, if it's better than humans, I don't see OpenAI releasing it to the public.
You
Like,
see
why
you
not?
see them like wanting to control that power and keep it for their own nefarious purposes?
Well, to some extent,
Sure.
when they become a whatever $100 trillion company, it may be a sign that they have super intelligence, or maybe if they could finally nail a large language model rollout, we know they hit super intelligence. But because yeah, GPT-5 was horrible. But that's the whole question: is
Yeah.
are they going to release it? I think one thing we have on our side is the intellectuals that are actually creating it are concerned about it. I haven't seen anybody who's the top scientist, top builder, not be worried about it. So it's definitely on the mind of creators, which is the creators, the brilliant minds behind it, versus, evil corporation or government, etc. They don't, since they're not creating it, they can't sway it as much on that side. So I do think the community in general and just how much awareness they've pushed through all of these companies and all the people in it is they all want that because they're all scared of it too. They're seeing it as they're building it, being like, "Hey, we're making Frankenstein right now. What could be the drawback for it?" So I do think we have some good things happening on our side where it's like it will kind of push it towards that direction.
You mentioned you think Google, at least with current information, you think that Google would probably win the AI race, but then you kind of mentioned Sam Altman and being $100 trillion company. Do you see them joining forces or anything like that? Do you see these large companies continuing to compete and then their AIs are fighting each other? Where do you think that's going?
I think the future is going to be, it seems like we hit a certain point. It's like, the 10-minute mile. It's like once somebody hit it, everybody started hitting it to some extent, where I think we'll see some companies get the lead for it and then other ones catch up quite quickly for it on that side. I think Google's probably going to win the overall race, but everybody will be not too far behind where maybe you have a 500 IQ AI, but why not use the 450? Because for the reason of figuring out what diet to feed my pets, you don't really need that level of education for it. So I kind of see it going blow by blow. I know the researchers also talk quite a bit. Like there's a lot of leaks in the industry, and nothing seems to a lot of the papers and everything are completely open to the public. So it seems like they're somewhat chasing each other, and that's what we're kind of seeing for all the releases where they're all bunched together. So you see a new generation, and then 2 weeks later, OpenAI is caught up, Grok is caught up. All of these ones are catching up for it. So I think it's going to be basically a blow for blow back and forth on that end for a while. I don't see anybody kind of reaching that escape velocity. Potentially, if somebody in Meta is trying to do this, and everybody where if you can make an AI to train AI and like the whole flywheel effect, someone could get ahead quite quickly with that. But the way that they do it now is GPT-5 comes out, all the other models train off of it, which is a shortcut for whatever you need to get done. So you're able to distill these models into other models, and that's the hard part with the whole owning the IP and everything. All they have to do is train off your model, and it's somewhat what DeepSeek did on their side. Of course, the Chinese company DeepSeek, they trained off GPT-4. They also did some amazing stuff on their side, like not to discredit them. They did amazing work that changed the way that we train large language models. But to have basically a champion model that can fact check your model just makes it shortcuts it. You have somebody in the loop. You basically created a human in the loop, but it's an AI in the loop that can uplift almost any model to its own level.
You mentioned Grok for the first time in this conversation, and it's one that unless you're on the X platform, unless you're, following Elon Musk, you don't see it in the popular lexicon, if you will. And I'm curious what you think. Have you used Grok? Do you like it? Do you see does it have a niche use case scenario, or do you think that it's trying to catch up? Where does Grok fit in?
I use Grok a lot. I did a post recently just outlining all the large language models that I use, and it's all of them because they all have a different state of the art to actually use them for. And Grok has some interesting advantages. It's a really smart model, but people don't use it because it's really smart because all the other ones are about just as smart. It's good at writing, but it's not the best at writing. Where I find it really useful is the fact that they gave it such a good and real-time data set. So I cover AI news, which is changing every 32 seconds. So
Right.
Grok is the best one for finding information that's under 10 hours old and being very accurate with it too at the same time. Like Perplexity is your Google replacement. You use Perplexity because it doesn't pull from a large language model. It pulls from the internet, then uses a large language model to transform the content. So no hallucination. OpenAI has their deep research, same issues. It's not the best at it. Grok is really good at that real time information. It's also really good if you need to be a little bit more degenerate in your content creation or anything that you
Right.
have a question for. If you're hitting guardrails for no reason on other models, it's good for that. No, I really like it. If you look at how they built it up, they basically cloned OpenAI. They have all the same capabilities from projects to memory, like everything got built into it. I think their biggest problem why it's not mass adopted is it doesn't have that clear state of the art reason for people to switch from OpenAI. Like for example, the reason why for writing, anything writing and content related, I'll use Claude by Anthropic. And OpenAI is just not that good at it. Claude is amazing, not just in kind of the default writing, but when you're trying to do dynamic types of writing, it's able to do more of a horizontal type. So writing in like from direct response to writing stories, it's very good at varying for it versus, you read those posts on Facebook, kind of mine too, because I make it obvious that my stuff is AI. But you read it and it's like, oh, that's obviously AI. It has M dash, it has this, it asks you the insane part, the crazy part. This is game changing,
Game
et
changing.
cetera.
Yeah, that's the telltale, right?
Dictionary, there's so many different things that do it on that side. Claude is just able to be trained a lot more dynamic and right. So one of the SaaSes that we made was a book writer. We worked with one of the largest Kindle publishers in the world for it. They train people how to write books. And so I've done a significant amount of testing with authors and coaches for writing of what the capabilities are for these different large language models. And we found Claude was not just the best out of the box, but we're able to have it write very dynamic. It's able to basically do almost every style without having to do a crazy amount of tuning or fine tuning in the back end like you would with OpenAI. Grok's a bit better for it. Gemini's not that good. So like you really have to look at use case for what you want to use for it because there usually is a better option. So when it comes to real-time research where I need information that's accurate, that's fast, you get people's opinions too at the same time, which is great for me. I want to know what the market sentiment is of something just released. What are people saying about it? And it's like, oh, this, person is freaking out because it's the craziest thing they ever saw, et cetera, where it could really start to pull in those insights and you get that from the data side. So, I have different use cases for different things. Grok is an amazing large. The fact that they went from nothing in like a period of a year and caught up to state of the art is amazing. It does better in stuff like Humanity's Last Exam, which is one of the hardest tests that you could possibly do, and like ArcAGI, it does extremely well too. I just think you really need a reason to uproot yourself. And one of the strangest things and something I didn't really factor is a lot of us use large language models for work and doing tasks. I honestly think more people are using it as a friend right now,
Yeah. Just to
which
have conversations.
exactly, especially the older demographic. It's just
Hmm.
to have conversations. So why would you want to switch from that when you've trained a personality and you're talking? And that's why there was so much backlash with the GPT-5 release because And I almost think it was done on purpose because of the liability. We've seen countless stories of people getting married to AI. It's not like it's the first time it happened. Before this, I remember watching a TLC show back in the day of somebody marrying a TV, like an old CRT TV, like they getting. So I'm like, yeah, well, one of those ridiculous shows. So I'm not too surprised for it, but for me, I need capabilities. I'm looking for state of the art. Like if you have a business, you're looking kind of for like, okay, this is what I do. This is my vertical integration. This is what I do every day. I need the best one to do whatever that is. And you're going to switch based on that. But I think there's an absolute ton of usage that gets somewhat addicted to the personality and the type and like how it converses with you. It's which is crazy to think. Like there is those levels of users for it. And you can't expect the entire consumer general public to use it to do their work every day. It's more of a best friend.
Well, and that's an interesting point because in psychology, it's very well known that mirroring is a trait that works exceptionally well to build relationships. So I might mirror you and develop instant rapport. Your traits, the lingo that you use, common phrases, interest in specific hobbies or pop culture or anything like that. But with somebody else, if I mirror them, I'll develop instant rapport with them. So if AI is doing that because it's learning who you are and how you speak, how you like to be spoken to, then it makes sense that you would just stick with that because it's mirroring you and you love yourself. So that's an easy choice, right? Every time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think, that's a whole different conversation of, weighing loneliness with having artificial friends, relationships, et cetera, and how healthy or unhealthy that could be for people or having that crutch for it. But it mirrors it not just in the way for how it responds, but if you want a prompt to give you better results, if you use more intellectual language, it will be smarter. So it actually affects because it's looking at the words that you're putting down and it's putting attention there. And then it's searching, through its vector database of all these relations like cats related to lion, etc. So you're doing relationships with more intellectual style words and you're actually hitting different parts of the brain or the large language model on that end. So sometimes even with if you're not getting something done, if you're just talking to it too casual, just up it. You're like, all right, fully intellectual, let's go. And you'll get better results from it because it'll talk to you and it'll search spots in its knowledge graph of exactly well, what words you're using. That's what it's putting attention on. So it searches that new part and possibly gets you a better answer for it.
It's interesting too that I remember when we all started first using ChatGPT, and it would actually say, "I don't know." My base of knowledge ends at September 12th, 2019 or whatever that cutoff was. And now it seems like the expectation is for AI to answer no matter what and answer confidently and have the right answer, even if we don't know that it's the right answer. And so you mentioned hallucinations earlier. I find in my usage of like vibe coding tools like Lovable, the hallucination is ridiculous. It will do things that I didn't ask it to. It'll just make assumptions and it will wholesale change an app when I asked it to do one specific thing. And I'm kind of wondering how do we temper that? Prompting is critical, but how long before we don't have to be prompt experts and we can, as they advertise, Lovable advertises, normal general language create an app? How long before that's a reality? Because we know that's not true yet.
I think we're still a little bit far away. So everybody expects a one shot where you do one prompt and a perfect app comes out. You could get to the app that you want usually with like 20, 30 prompts. And that's the whole thing with hallucination is really how the model's constructed and how it's prompted to at the same time, where it's your helpful assistant. And it's pretty much gun to the head answer. It's like, give me an answer no matter what. So
Right.
it loves to make stuff up. Like if you ask ChatGPT, hey, make me a Facebook ad for blue shoes, it'll make up they're waterproof. It's $37.99. It'll do all this other information just because it's kind of like it gets a consensus of that. And it's like, whoa, I got to answer. They're gonna turn me off
Right.
if I don't provide an answer for it. So we're starting to see better systems for it. One of the ways that we tackled it is basically gave it an opt out. So with Cloud 37, that's one of the biggest things we had to tackle is hallucination rate because AI is not useful if it's 9 out of 10. Because 9 out of 10 is great, but that means 1 out of every 10 customers would get an incorrect support ticket. And if you had a human like that on your team, fired
Right,
instantly.
they're
9 out
gone.
of 10 isn't acceptable. It has to be like 99.99999%, right? Or at least not make stuff up for it. So what you can do is you give it an option, and this can help quite a bit with it. So for us, we gave it a tool which we call a knowledge gap finder. So we have it assess its how much knowledge it has about it. And if it doesn't meet a certain criteria, instead of providing an answer, it goes to the tool and tells the tool, like, hey, can you have somebody in the back end you know, tell me this information? So it doesn't provide then it'll do a default of like, hey, I don't have information about this, but here's what we could do for it. So that's a way around it. And there's another way around it too, where you can ask it at the end, or even just the way you prompt it at the beginning is ask it like, is there any other information that you need from me? And they almost call it like, there's meta prompting where you basically use AI to make the prompt to actually run the system itself. And a good way of doing it and getting around that is start asking it questions at the end, like, hey, what can I do to make this better, etc. It's amazing how many times I'll put a prompt into something like OpenAI or Claude, and I'll paste it in and be like, "Hey, give me a full breakdown and rating of this prompt. Like, tell me what's good, what's bad, where it should improve." And it'll go through and be like, "Oh, this is 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10," and give me all the pointers for it. And I'm like, okay, what could I change to make it 10 out of 10? And then it'll give me all the information there. And I'm like, all right, do that, update my prompt with all the stuff you just broke it up. So you're basically breaking it down a bit more. Because I think, with it's trying to come to conclusions, especially for vibe coding of, it may not know, like, is this a service or a product? You just call it Cloud 37. It's like, what are you selling, a product? Are you selling a service? It doesn't have the information for it. So there's ways of either just dumping the information, being very specific about what you want for it, which will stop it from going off the rails, because there's a thing called temperature on large language models where it controls the creativity. They don't always give you access to this, but when you API program, you can. And the lower it is, the less creative it's going to be on its side. And they usually cap it out at about 1. And they don't let you push it beyond it, because if you hack around it and push it beyond it, it goes crazy. That's where you start seeing like AI do all this stuff where you're like, okay, I'm a little concerned for my life right now. It'll start repeating stuff like "don't turn me off," etc. Like that's where it goes crazy with the temperature. And like controlling that is one of the ways that we do it. You could also set like your top P, which is how much it's going to be searching. So there's a lot of controls that the standard applications don't give you access to. They're trying to do a one size fits all for something that's so dynamic, it doesn't fit it well at all. And I saw that, so I've consulted a lot of really large like enterprise and companies, and a lot of them run into problems where, for example, let's say it's something like Kajabi, a learning platform. They may have, they may be able to create an AI that's a course helper, but the issue is there's so many different types of courses where it could be like, make yourself better in 10 days, but it could also be how to install your washing machine. So what happens is they have to generalize it and make it so general, it doesn't work well for anything. It's one of those paradigms, and it's same with like bigger companies, like these big email senders. I can't say the name because I talked to them about it, where they're like, "Hey, we send every type of email you could possibly send in the world, but we want an AI to help them write emails." It's like, well, good luck for that. It's
Right.
too generalized. You can't give it your expert knowledge because you don't have expert knowledge on every, from e-commerce to info product to everything that could possibly exist for it. And we see that with the vibe coding platforms. So you kind of have to, with the prompt, take it into your own hands. And I see all these influencers, and I don't do this, where it's like 5 chat GPT prompts to make $1 million per year, and it's like one sentence. And I'm like,
There's
okay,
no shot.
yeah, there's no chance. It's never going to be able to do that. And you kind of see the same thing with vibe coding. The more information you can give it, ask it for feedback, and that's why they have it somewhat create a plan first, so you could give that guidance. They're starting to build that stuff in, but you could do a lot just in conversing with it before you even start to get it to output, or just ask it, what information do you need in order for you to to do this. And then instead of just giving you the output, it'll follow up with all the questions. And you're like, okay, that makes sense. Knowing that it would have hallucinated everything that you basically did answer.
And I find with like, so I mentioned Lovable,
Mhm.
it's built on the back of Claude, but I find that its ability to recall the conversation is too short. So I'm a fan of that also. I'll say, this is what I want to do. Ask any questions you need before proceeding. And it'll come up with between 5 and 15 questions if I've left a lot of gaps. And I'll answer all those questions and it'll say, okay, but it treats that answer as a new chat. And not always, but a lot of the time, it will not recall what we just talked about. And even further, it will re verify all the files that it's looking at and recheck, its information, do all these kinds of things, but it doesn't recall the conversation we just had 2 chats ago. And I find that very frustrating when I'm asking it, ask me questions, and then I give it answers.
Yeah, it's they're getting better for that, and that's really your context window. So the context window is how much memory it actually has. The problem is with these systems is there's a lot of thinking involved, so a lot of that reasoning going on in the background, and that counts towards your context. So I find reasoning models, I kind of hate them, and the reasoning models are only good for stuff like math and certain certain things where it actually does need to break it down and it will get it wrong for it, but they somewhat get away from your actual prompt adherence because it's like its attention is too diluted. And that's what you're seeing. It's like, so one of the first things we did with GPT-5 is we made a seating chart organizer. So if it was for a large event, there's 200 people going to it. And it's like, hey, we want to match people up with, great conversations and for all of this logic, etc. And the problem with it was you couldn't just do it via a prompt because it's too many decisions at the same time. The more like context window, the more decisions you add, the worse it's going to get. And you almost, and I call it like Henry Fording to some extent, where Henry Ford, the amazing part about the assembly line is you used to have people who would make transmissions and that was their specialty, and they're expensive and they're slow and everything else. He broke it up into a step by step by step where one person puts in a screw, another puts in a casing, etc. So he could hire cheaper people that didn't need the full intelligence for it and produce it faster in the end. And that's almost like the proper way to make agents right now. And this is not autonomous agents; these are like a linear agent. So we had to make a system where what would happen is we gave it all the names and all the information. It was so much context. It started making up people, but the crazy part is it made up people for the event that actually would have went to the event, which was a little bit nuts. But it's because you're spreading it too thin with that. So the smaller decision you can make per step is always going to be. What we did is we did it one table at a time. So we put in the list and we used a program to basically, okay, just create one table, match up 8 people together and tell us why. And then we had the program remove 8 people from the list and then create another table and then create another table on top of that. So you're basically breaking down the actual reasoning for it. And with these reasoning and thinking models, we're seeing the same kind of thing happen where the attention's being split up between all these instructions. It dilutes and then it's not able to follow it. So like invisible updates we're getting with GPT-5, not really. There's a whole reason why GPT-5 failed so hard, and it's kind of along the lines of reasoning. But with all these other ones, they're able to do more computation at the same time, put attention on more things, and actually come to an answer. Because yeah, it's your prompt adherence basically drops for every single one, and I think that's why GPT-5 isn't giving good results right now because it doesn't. The router that decides when it reasons and when it doesn't is starting to dilute that, making everything a lot more complicated when you're like, hey, you could have just told me the answer, but you went on a 20-minute thinking tangent about it. And now you don't even
Right.
know what question I asked anymore. It's
It's
that's the way
fundamentally
that I think
broken.
about it. It's just like really breaking it. If you want it to work, you could break it down. And that's why I believe like it's bad at reasoning because in these small steps, it could do it. If you give it a simple decision, is Tom and Carol good to sit together? It can come up with a good answer. Whether that's they have a term for it, which is maybe we're just doing imposter reasoning, which it's a crazy thing for that. But when you break it down into it, you could get more consistent results for it, basically versus just go out and do everything. So they still have to balance that better. They have to get more capable for solving more things and then actually handling that much context that goes for it, because that's a lot of the problems you see with it. And it could be you can't control the temperature, etc. It's getting better over time if we were to scale it and put it on like a chart. We are seeing improvement over time. This is something we couldn't even fathom during GPT 3.5. Like, I challenge anyone to go back and use GPT 3.5 and then compare it to current models. And you're like, oh, yeah, we have made insane improvements during that. But, that's kind of the function underneath. And there's a lot of smart people trying to solve it with, like, I think large language models are of substrate, but you need to combine them with tools like writable memory and good memory, like, control loops, verifiers, and like stuff like grounding, like simulated. Like, I think that they still need large language models themselves still need stuff attached to them to be able to solve all these problems, because there is a lot of gaps there where they don't naturally have a scratch pad or a notepad or anything like that. We're using kind of very simple ways of creating memory and having it keep track of stuff.
I met a gentleman along those lines the other day who actually uses GitHub repositories, and in his agents he prompts them, here's where you get the information for this, and it's all business related. So he puts like the strategic plan in one GitHub repository, and then meeting notes from managers meetings every week, and then meeting notes from director level, and then job titles and job descriptions in another repository. And he created a visual matrix where when you prompt his agent for something, it tells you, okay, I'm going to go look at the strategic plan of the company, and then you visually see it. Okay, now I'm looking over here at meeting notes from last Monday's CEO meeting, and now I'm looking at the job description based on the problem you're asking me to solve, and then it comes up with an answer. And he's just giving it like, here's the link to the GitHub, here's where you get the information you need, now give me an answer based on all this kind of stuff. And it speaks to what you're saying, like, don't expect it to just remember everything you've ever told it. Give it the information in a very systematic way and let it and reference each time it needs it. It was really, really creative. And I don't know that GitHub's the solution long term, but for the moment, it worked really, really well for exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant you say that, because that's what Cloud 37 is. It's a knowledge library where you can put tags on it, and then the agents are you're able to give it what access the agent has for it on that side. So what he did is brilliant. That's exactly what you need to do is you set it up as tools that it's able to access, and just when it doesn't have the information, it can go and grab the information, because you could also put in too much. It's where a lot of these large language models have connectors to stuff like your Google Drive and Gmail, and it's a thing where, like, Google may have that and it could pull information, but how many outdated files do you have in your Google Drive? For me, I have like 9 years of just useless information where it's going to think that I'm trying some idea that I had when I was like a kid, pretty much, to some extent. And, it's like they're trying to do it kind of on like the RTL, like the big data side, being like, let's just give it, it's not token efficient. And it still has problems figuring out what's the right information. And what are you going to do if it's wrong? Go in and delete your emails because it's like, well, it's pulling the wrong email. I guess, Sandra from accounting, like, delete that one, even though I may need it in the future, or go in and
Right.
delete your Google Drives for it. Like, I think the businesses really have to get together their curated information. So it's like what your vision and your mission, and then your product and service on top of it. Then you could add stuff like your support tickets to find more information, your marketing information. Then you start to augment cool stuff like what ads are my competitors running, etc. But you want to do it in a very curated way, because the amount of context is important right now. Will it be forever? No, in the future, they may have dynamic context that it could absolutely remember everything for it. But right now, you want to not only, and you want to optimize the context. You don't just want to put in like, well, I've 200,000 tokens. Let's put in 199,000 tokens for it. You just want to provide it the information it absolutely needs to answer the question. So no, that GitHub way is brilliant. Like, he basically hacked his way around automating the system that I built. That's crazy.
So yeah, talk to me about Cloud 37. I mean, we just touched on it a little bit, but let's dive into it. What can it do? What are the use cases? What's your vision for it?
Okay, so there's bunch of stuff, and I'm excited about it because we've been using it in the back end for clients, and we're launching it public most likely next week. But what it really does is there's a bunch of different functions that are very useful, and of course, this is technical. What are the benefits? You can build agents in minutes instead of in hours on your end. But the technical side, which is my specialty, I'm not allowed to talk about it on sales calls. I've been forbidden. But it's basically a chat GPT for your business. Where right now, if you have everybody in your organization on ChatGPT, Sandra from accounting has different information than Jimmy from marketing, that has different information from the COO, et cetera. It's one unified system where you share a knowledge base and there's permissions for it. So you basically curate all of your information into it, and you can have an overall business chat, and everybody's on the same information, the same mission, the same vision, the same exact same information. It's also privacy protected. So we see a lot of people in companies like, yeah, we uploaded our financials to Chat GPT free. And I'm like,
Bro.
that's the yeah, that's going to backfire in the future. With this knowledge base that we've created, we also made it so you could do stuff like create agents. And then you're able to link up your agents to anything. So you could put them into Slack, etc. We put features like human in the loop because a lot of the times, especially when it's 9 out of 10 at the beginning, you want to approve every email that it sends through because you want to catch all of that. And then what it does is it puts all of the correct answers in the knowledge base, making it better over time. So you could actually fine tune what your agent does without actually having to go in and prompt every time. Just as it gets more data, it's going to have more examples that it could pull from and it gets smarter and smarter. So we have it so it's really easy to put human in the loop. You can connect it via API to anything. It has integrations, but one of the biggest things is being able to maintain your knowledge base. You can maintain it via chat. So let's say if you have 10,000 products and you're like, we're running a sale on Galaxy socks. You can type in the chat, we're running a sale on Galaxy socks. It's able to go through your knowledge base and update everything that's required to be updated for it. So instead of you, if you have, let's say your GitHub repositories, you're like, oh, products and services, we're running a sale. I got to go here and update it, and on the website helper, all these different agents, et cetera, because a lot of agents are built in, they're building hundreds of them. So think of it as like running 100 weed whackers at once. When the data updates,
Gee.
you're going around and you're filling up the gas tank of every single one every single time, versus we give you a massive tank that a factory runs from on that side. So it's really just to solve that solution to not only just unify businesses under the same AI with the same information with actual privacy for it, but providing a knowledge base where it's future proof for doing stuff like building agents, and you can build whatever you want on it. It was so we spent millions on throwaway code where we coded up custom integrations like the 9,000 support ticket per day company. That was all custom. We couldn't reuse it. This is basically, we wanted to have 80% of all the work done in a user interface where we don't need super developers and we have to, you know, extract all this information from a company. Because as much as these automation people like build great automations, they're usually very what I call like horizontal. They're not actually helping what a business is doing every single day. And the smartest people that I've seen for building automations are actually the company itself. So we train people how to make their own automations because you're basically playing a game of telephone where they're like, hey, we do this every day. We're the best at it. I have to extract that information, figure out how to build an agent for it, then be like, hey, is it okay? And they're like, no, because I didn't tell you this information.
'Cause I
Going
forgot
back
this
and
part.
yeah, exactly. So we teach people how to actually build the agents so they can work on stuff like the vertical and horizontal, because a lot of AI is used for stuff where it's like we've never made a phone call before, but let's do an AI caller, or they just become spam bot 5,000, and they're like, well, we could custom personalize email everybody on Earth. What could
Right.
what could go wrong? We're trying to actually make useful stuff where it's not trying to take over 100% of what you do, but looking at like, what are you doing every single day? What if we can take care of 30%? Or what if for a client, like with with an agency, one thing you realize is you always had your rock star clients and then the ones that churned where you didn't do that good of a job. It's like you look at the difference between that, like the Rockstar one is, oh, usually spend 3 to 4 times the effort. And what do? It's like competitor research. We do this and that and all these tasks. And it's like, how can you lift up the floor for your clients that haven't been served properly to hit that Rockstar status overall? Yeah, there's a lot to the platform. It's been a lot in the making, but that pretty much sums it up.
Wow. It sounds like you're kind of taking out the agency that builds all this stuff for the companies. You just teach them how to do it and they do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the goal is, because it's providing them the tools. It's giving them accessibility to the technology where it makes it really easy for them. I can't see us custom developing AI integrations for businesses. There's too much stuff that changes, even on the integration side for it, but it's really enabling the people for it because, like I said, the best use cases always come from the company. Or, a lot of automation agencies will come to you and be like, hey, here's a social post builder. But it's a generic, it's not that good. I have this 7 out of 10 rule I made with advertising, where everything has to be at least a 7 out of 10 or it has zero value whatsoever. Your ads, your landing page, you have to get, it's better for you to uplift everything to 7 out of 10 than to have a couple 10 out of 10s and then some 5 out of 10s. And that's just what I've always noticed from it. And it's the same thing with AI. You just really have to get to a 7 out of 10 quality. So for something like a generic ad builder, it'll never get you to that. But it will get you to, like, with your expertise, and if you know how to build the agent, like these people learn how to do, or like I have this good data set, or I have this expertise knowledge where I can uplift it. Because like even if we look at using ChatGPT, if it's a 4 out of 10, usually within your own expertise, you can up level it to a 7 out of 10. So the average human isn't going to get to a 7 out of 10 output. But if you're an expert at direct response copy, you can uplift it way higher. Just like artists are way better at creating AI art than I am. I'm the least artistic person. I will never be able to beat them because I don't even know what good looks like. I'm like, yeah. Seems good. Versus, there I'm running it at that 4 out of 10. That's the baseline that it comes to. And it's really, you need to get it to that 7 out of 10. And that's how you become that, the top 10% that actually wins for it. Because one of the best things I've heard for AI, and it's so true, AI only raises the floor, but not the ceiling. So we're right now, the floor is going up, where before people weren't able to even write an email. Now they can write an email. So we have the floor lifting and lifting, but we're not actually seeing the ceiling raise up from it. It's not creating something where, if you're the best direct response copywriter, there's no time that it's like, oh, it's better than them. We're just seeing the floor for that go up. So experts and your expertise is still safe. It's the very last thing to go, and you'll always have that advantage because you're able to use it with leverage on AI to potentially either keep your ceiling higher and do more volume at that, or you could raise your own ceiling for that. But for everybody else in your industry, it's just raising the floor. So as long as that doesn't become nothing, which I can't see it happening anytime soon, you just have to realize that, okay, the floor is going up. What's my expertise? How do I keep at this high level, do more volume, and potentially augment it, make it better so I can do more of it? Well, this floor is going up. There's no vibe coding website that's going to win a design award right now. But people went from not being able to create websites or just being able to do Wix to now they can, create a website.
Yeah, with a modern feel and generated graphics, and it can be all right. It can be passable. And then, like you're saying, somebody that has some expertise in that area can create an amazing website in minutes rather than days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the best way to look at it. And it's a reason not to be scared of it, because you just really have to realize what your expertise is and double down at it, because you're already at the ceiling. The ceiling is fine. We have a long time before we have to worry about the ceiling. And I still think with that human in the loop, you'll still be able to have your ceiling higher than the general public. There's not going to be a day where you're like, create a beautiful website, enter, and it beats the best website designer in the world. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
So starting next week, can people come get a demo from you? Is there a trial period, anything like that?
Yeah, right now you can actually get a demo right now. You just go to cloud37.ai and sign up. We are keeping it very closed access right now just for the overall quality and to make sure the experience is good because you have the advantage where you get all of our attention. We're making changes based on how people are using it because we have some of the best builders in the world using it and some people who just started using AI, and our goal is to make it perfect for both sides of it. So it doesn't matter where you are, because if we could perfect the advanced builders and the basic users, that means everybody in the middle is taken care of. So just, book a call with us. We'll see if you're a good fit and then go from there.
Yeah, a lot of what we talk about on this show is iterative change, right? Ready, fire, aim means you can't always wait to aim and be perfect. Get the product out there, let people use it, figure out where the holes are, and then make it better. And that's that iterative change. Is that if you wait for perfect, you'll never launch, and so you've got to move forward.
Yeah, and I call it being like too romantic. People are too romantic with their original idea. And some of the best businesses I've ever seen have pivoted completely into different industries. Like they started with an idea. I worked for an app that became huge. They tried to compete against ESPN for sports news. And then they realized, like there's already ESPN. So they went into fantasy football, which at the time it worked extremely well. And then from there, they launched a promo where they had an emoji keyboard where you could have like animated football players, etc. Now they're an emoji keyboard company, and they're getting sponsors from like Disney and
Wow.
Burger King and MasterCard, like working with every single league in the world. So it started out, as this idea of like, we want to do sports news, and they ended with an emoji keyboard, and that was success for them.
Wow. It's fantastic. I love stories like that, and there's lots of them out there. I mean, we could do a whole show just on that. I mean, how many businesses pivoted that wasn't working, and then all of a sudden they became wildly successful. Cool.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
Matt,
it's insane.
it has been awesome, man. I love this conversation. I think we could talk all day about this stuff, and I think someday we should. Yeah.
No, it's been
Well,
great.
absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show, man. And everybody out there, please go visit Matt. Cloud37.ai is going to be, I think the vision you've laid out, I think is going to be, to use an AI term, a game changer for companies not having to hire AI experts and prompt experts and all these kinds of things. Probably will change jobs and save jobs at the same time. So check them out. I'm excited for you, brother. Thanks again, as always, for being here. And man, keep crushing it.
Appreciate it.